Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of On the Move with the Caravan football preview with Jim Powers, and I'm here with Jim Powers. How you doing today, Jim?
I'm doing good, Chris. Wow. I mean, is it just me or is this flying by? And I know I
It's
say it
flying
every
by.
week, but it is just going at a absolute incredible pace this year. And once again, last week didn't disappoint with the games. This week's
Nope.
not going to disappoint. Now everybody's jockeying for not only conference championships, but also for seeds. You're trying to get as many points as you can to get those top couple seeds so that you can either get a bye or that you can host. So it gets really interesting, especially the last 3 weeks of the regular season, because everybody's kind of jockeying for position right now with district points.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of different schools, especially looking at St. Pius, how teams have bounced up and down the standings in our district as well. So you're having there's some big ramifications as far as district seeding is concerned, not just the conferences.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you got to win, and if you're in third place, and you want to try and jump to that one spot, especially if you're in a 17 district, number one's getting a bye, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. But in football, I think it's a good thing because it gives your kids a week to kind of get the kinks out, get those dings and those, bruises and bumps and all that kind of stuff out of the way. But absolutely, if you're sitting there, and then if you're in that 4-5 slot, in an 8-team district, yeah, if you're 4, you're hosting. If you're 5, you're traveling. So yeah, winning a conference is great, and it's great to have that trophy. But I think everybody's more concerned right now with district seeding, especially with just some of these brutal districts that are out there.
They are brutal.
I mean, you want to try and figure out any way to avoid playing, certain teams in that semifinal. But I tell you what, in looking at the districts and looking at some of the standings, I'm going to tell you right now, we are going to be in for one outstanding postseason run this year. And it's going to start in the district semifinals because of how good a lot of these districts really are stacked up and loaded this year.
It almost seems like, especially with having those 7-team districts, the state playoffs actually starts at the district semifinals now and kind of plays through because there's not as many state playoff games per se as there are maybe in other sports. So,
oh yeah, without a doubt. And that's going to be the big thing. I mean, yeah, you know what, that first round, okay, it's great. Everybody splits the gate and all that kind of stuff. But absolutely, and the way a lot of the districts were laid out this year, your state playoff run is going to start there. I mean, you've got to strap it up every weekend from the semis all the way through. You're not going to have a gimme. And remember, a couple of years ago, when we didn't see a lot of this stuff, you could get to that district final. Your first 2 games are pretty okay, pretty easy, but then things kind of ramp up from there. Not this year. It's just absolutely unbelievable the way that this thing could turn out this year. And once again, you got the possibility of a St. Mary's winning a Class 4 state championship, winning, Class 3 last year, Class 4 this year. I mean, shoot, you're also looking at Lutheran St. Charles. Can they battle back from some tough losses here over the last couple of weeks and try and win the Class 3 title? It's just so ridiculous. And you got Valley Catholic. The honeymoon's over with, and they're playing like we know Valley Catholic can play. And that's smash mouth football that's got everybody in the state scared to bejesus about them and where they could end up.
Yeah, 100%, because I mean, they are playing on another level right now, and that's just a little preview of what we'll be maybe talking about coming up. But let's jump into the state rankings. They just came out this week. So, Jim, what do you have for us about Class 6?
In Class 6, the normal suspects are sitting there. You've got Liberty North, you got CBC, Summit North, Nixa, who, once again, I still will sit here and say is playing the best football out of anybody in the state. DeSmet hanging in there at 5. Once
best
again,
3-3 team in the state.
The best 3-3 team in the state, absolutely. Then you got Joplin at 6. Then you look at, Troy, Marquette, Blue Spring South, and Ray-Pac. Finally, there's some teams getting some votes, Rockbridge and Seckman. And Seckman deserves some votes. I mean, they're playing some great football. And our student athlete of the week this week on Scoops is Cole Rubel. And what a great
well deserved.
He just committed down to SEMO. And I think he's going to fit in terrific in Coach Turk's system down there. I love watching the kid play. He's so good and does so many things well. So it's good to see Seckman, coming out of that. But once again, look at the district that Seckman's in. Kirkwood, CBC, SLU High, yeah, and then Seckman.
Tough district.
It's brutal district. I mean, it's brutal trying to, figure out how you're going to traverse through that thing. But no, I mean, not a whole lot of changes, not a whole lot of moving around in 6. So, once again, CBC's got a couple good matchups coming up. DeSmet gets St. Mary's this week, which there's your tease for one of the games we're going to talk about here in a bit. But some big match to talk about here in Class 5. And once again, Class 5 is just going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, Class 5 is it's a meat grinder. I mean, it just shows there's like a log jam of you might win a big game, but you're not moving up because the other teams above you they're just as good and they're also winning big games.
Yeah, and then you look at Class 5. Carthage still sitting at 1. Their only loss, Nixa. Howell's just beating the bejesus out of everybody right now, and they get the big one against Timberland this week for the JC South title. And then you've got Lebanon, you got Webb, who's 4-2, maybe the best 4-2 team in the state. Camdenton. What about the Lakers from down at Lake Ozarks? I mean, what a terrific year they're having. Then you've got Holt, MICDS, who suffered their first loss this past weekend. Eureka, Timberland, and Oak Park. There's not a gimme.
No.
There is not a gimme there. And, you've got, look at your some of these matchups. You don't have a Jackson team in getting votes right now, and they're still pretty talented. You've got Howell sitting in a district with Timberland. You got Zumwalt North, who you still have to consider a dark horse in this whole thing with the schedule that they've played. I'm telling you, Class 5, you win it, you're the best team in the state of Missouri. And you look at the top 10 right there. And then you look at Helias, who's only 2 losses, Blair Oaks, Cardinal Ritter.
Those 2 teams are okay.
Yeah, they're pretty. Once again, let me go on to Clay. Here you go, Ted. Here's the state trophy. Go ahead, you get it, because other than Lamar, there ain't nobody touching them in Class 2.
Yeah. So let's look at Class 4 right now. What do you think about Class 4, Jim?
Now I think you're starting to see a little bit of some stuff shaking out. St. Mary's, once again, getting all the votes. They're playing some great football right now. Their only losses to Neuqua Valley up in Chicago. Kearney at 2nd. Smithville, looking for a return run to the state. Center, which is an interesting team. And then you've got Union in Hillsborough that are just they're doing what they do. They win football games. Yeah. And then Nevada and then Rockwood Summit. And we had Eric Stewart on the podcast earlier today talking about, what a bounce back for that team. Over the last 2 years, they've only lost 2 games.
It's unreal.
I mean, and you're looking at Rockwood Summit, and they had some great teams. When I first moved here back in the mid-2000s, late 2000s, they had some really nice teams and made a little bit of noise. But now with Eric Stewart, they're getting a lot of consistency, and you're starting to see that. He mentioned that they have 150 kids in their little kid program. I mean,
wow.
that's amazing.
That is.
You got that many kids in your young kids program. And then you got West Plains is another team, the Zippers, everybody talks about, how good they are. And once again, Class 4 is just really, really stacked. But, you see, a little bit of, you're starting to see some spacing a little bit, when it comes to where everybody's at. But once again, you look at the same district. How about St. Mary's and Rockwood Summit in the same district? That could be your district final. And that's going to be a monster of a game up here in St. Louis.
100% agree. By the way, I got to correct you from being down in that area. It's Zizzers.
Oh,
Zizzers. And just so that way, if I ever run into anybody, they would definitely give me a hard time about that. They're awfully proud of their zizzers.
Zizzers,
I know.
bison, North Dakota. It's not the bison, it's the bison. You
Right,
got to get the
right,
Z in there. So
right.
I apologize to all the West Plains folks. I
Uh,
apologize right out of the bat. So
hey, if they're watching from their West Plains, that's great. We'll take it.
we'll take it. We'll take it. Absolutely.
Class three. What do we think about class three? Besides the fact that it's pretty darn good.
Pretty darn good. And you got, Cardinal Ritter, you got Pleasant Hill, who's having a terrific season. Valley Catholic, my God, that game they had last week with Park Hill Central was just, we talked about it. That's the type of games you want to see. And I'm finally glad that they're in the same conference and they're same classification and they're able to do it. And guess what? We may see that again here in a few weeks. Lutheran North, what a terrific win over MICDS on Saturday. Ricky, Dixon rushes for 5 touchdowns, I think it was, 230 some odd yards against a really good CDS defense. And then you got St. Pius, you got Maryville tied for 6, Savannah, Kennett, and then Park Hill Central drops from 8 down to 9. So, not a whole lot of shuffling there. But once again, I think we're starting to see the separation between the top 10 and kind of everybody else.
Yeah, then that's the thing too. I mean, outside of the jump by Lutheran North, especially with that big win over the Rams this last week, there's a separation between the top teams, but there's not a whole lot of movement. Just very little up or down either way. Especially in Class 3, there's been a lot of ties this year with teams in and up with the same amount of points too.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you've got a Lutheran St. Charles team who's still sitting there, and they deserve to be in the top 10. They played a terrific schedule. But you look at Pius, you look at Maryville. Once again, Maryville, Lutheran North this week. I mean, we didn't put that on our games to follow because it's, they're playing all the way out in Macon. But that's a monster game in Class 3. That's a possible quarterfinal game, in the States. So, you got to give Kyle Wagner a lot of credit with his scheduling. Lutheran St. Charles, once again, you see a little bit of movement. I think they could be maybe a slot down or 2 slots down, with that 3-3 record, but they're giving the schedule a lot of consideration right now.
Yeah, there's definitely when they're just looking at the rankings though. I mean, strength of schedules played a big factor. We talked about DeSmet being the best 3-3 team in the state. Lutheran's still a pretty good team.
Oh, they're fantastic. And once again, they got dinged up a little bit. That early season schedule took a toll on them. And then, you head into St. Mary's and then, oh my gosh, then we got to play Ritter. Oh, geez. Then it just kind of snowballed on them a little bit. But once again, I think they're going to be just fine once districts roll around in 3 weeks.
I agree. I mean, iron sharpens iron too.
Absolutely. Without a doubt, brother. Without a doubt.
So let's look at our highlighted matchups this week. First up, we have the 4-2 Lafayette Lancers doing battle with the 6-0 Class 5 6th ranked Eureka Wildcats. Last week, Lafayette defeated Ladue 49-10, led by sophomore quarterback Jack Bell, who went 21-26 for 222 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, as well as junior running back Dre Davis, who gained 176 total yards and 3 scores of his own. They will have their hands full, though, with Eureka, who's coming off of a big 34-7 win over a tough Pattonville team. It's no secret that the Wildcats will lean on a heavy diet of senior running back Kevin Emanuel, who for the season has rushed for 1,399 yards and 18 touchdowns. Jim, what's intriguing about this matchup to you besides the fact is how many yards Emanuel is going to get?
The Battle of 109. I don't care where you place, where the record's out the window. The schools are separated by 2 miles, literally. Yeah. I mean, once again, I've seen this game up close and personal. The atmosphere is just, you don't see it. You do not see the type of atmosphere that you see here. And once again, you look at a Lafayette team that's kind of flown under the radar this year. They've got a great defense. And Boyd Manny is such a terrific defensive mind. I don't know if they've got it up front to be able to stop that O-line and to stop Kevin Emanuel. I mean,
he's good.
He's got over 1,300 yards rushing already this year through 6 games.
He's 1 yard away from 1,400. That's how good it is right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's over 200 plus a game. He's second in the area in scoring. He just does so many things so well. But once again, the way that Lafayette's playing, you don't count them out, and especially a
Yeah.
rivalry game like this in front of a packed house. Now, Friday could be a little wet, could be a little bit chillier, so it'll be interesting to see how everybody adapts on possibly the first really, really interesting weather night that we're going to have this season.
Yeah, and without a doubt, because you look at the weather we've had some really warm days. It's now starting to get cold, and then it's been a while since we've had some precipitation in the
Yeah.
air playing some football. So we'll see how that factors into everything. Our next matchup is a battle of Class 5 state-ranked heavyweights as the ninth-ranked Timberland Wolves take their 5-1 record on the road to face the second-ranked 6-0 Francis Howell Vikings. Timberland is coming off of a crushing loss to Troy last week, 44-12, as star quarterback and St. Louis metro area leading passer A.J. Raines was held to 181 yards passing and 2 interceptions. Howell, on the other hand, is riding high after a 56-21 win last week against Fort Zumwalt West, as Vikings quarterback Adam Shipley had himself a game with 306 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. What a great conference matchup, Jim. I mean, you talked about it earlier.
This is for the South. I mean,
Yeah.
This is for the GAC South. Winner gets the crown. Loser going to probably be playing as the number 2 seed in the district. I mean, that's how this game is going to shake out. Shipley, the game he had last week was just unbelievable. 5 touchdown passes, another one on the ground. I think he accounted for 270 plus in total offense just himself. And here's the other stat. In those 5 touchdowns, he threw it to 5 different dudes.
Yeah.
Normally when you talk about that passing attack, you talk about he's finding Brett Northfleet a lot, but not in this case. He found 5 different guys, and they just do so many things so well. But then you look at Timberland. This is a really good team, and we never talked about Timberland up until 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always kind of the bridesmaid, never the bride, so to say, out, in the Wentzville School District and out in the GAC. Not anymore. You have to know what's going on with them because they're starting to really get things going in the right direction. And this is a fun team to watch. They put up points like there's no tomorrow. Their defense and the way that they put up points, it puts a lot of pressure on their defense, and their defense is giving up a lot of points. So you can't get in a shootout. If you get into a shootout in this game, Howell wins going away. If you can figure out ways to contain Shipley, not let him get to his receivers, and man up a little bit on the corners and cause some chaos in the secondary, I think you got a shot. But if you're Timberland, this cannot be a shootout. This cannot be arena football type stuff. You have to keep this game, limit possessions, and let your offense do some work. So that's going to be the big key. But once again, conference title on the line, packed house out in St. Charles County. Let's go. What a Week 7 matchup this is going to be for these two clubs.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of curious. I'm kind of curious to see how Raines comes back after having that game, the game that he did. Now, I mean, 181 yards passing, still pretty good of a high school quarterback, but at the same time, it's not in any compared to what he's done all year and the numbers that he's put up. And as you said, they have a high scoring offense, and they were really held down by Troy. So to see what they're going to be able to do to bounce back, and then what the defense is going to do to keep them from keep so much pressure off of the offense from scoring.
Yeah, you know what, and I know this is a type of game that defensive staffs, they don't sleep during the week.
Yeah.
They don't because they're having nightmares about Shipley and Northfleet and the offensive line that's got 5 dudes that are going to move you all over the place. But no, I think Raines has done a great job, stepping into that quarterback position and really doing some great things, and I know he can get it. Offensively, they can get a shootout. Yeah. But I think that there's just a few more weapons over on the house side to counteract what they can do. That's why if I'm Timberland, I don't want this to get out of the 20s. This needs to be a 28-24 game. 28-27 right in that ballpark. If it gets into the 30s and it's turning into a track meet, I don't like Timberland's chances because you've got a really, really good offense on the other side that's going to be able to make big plays.
100% agree. So we'll see how that one goes this week. Our next game features another battle of the birds in an I-55 conference matchup as the 3-3 Jefferson Blue Jays travel to Ware, Missouri to take on the 2-4 Grandview Eagles. Bet you didn't know where Ware was, Jim. Jefferson has won their last 2 games, including a 20-7 win last week over Perryville. The Blue Jay defense has turned stingy in those 2 wins, allowing only 13 points. Grandview comes into this one after taking a tough beating from Herculaneum last week, losing 47-0. And in the last 4 weeks, the Eagles have been outscored 173-27, with all 4 resulting in losses. Both teams have a lot of youth on each side, Jim. So how do you see this one going?
Yeah, once again, it's an I-55 battle. It's 2 really, really good teams. I love the fact that we're seeing a lot of great football down in Jefferson County. You know, it's got to go defensively. I mean, the offenses are putting up some great numbers, but I tell you what, I think the defense has to be the star of the show tomorrow night, and that's what you got to get into, is just trying to figure out ways to stop great running backs and great quarterback play and limit possessions. And if you can do that, I think you're going to be in great shape. But this is going to be an outstanding matchup for the I-55, and what a year it's been for that conference,
Yeah.
Chris. I mean, it's been fun to watch all across the board. All of the teams in the I-55 really playing extremely well. And this will be another fun one to watch.
Yeah, and Grandview's offense, I mean, with that triple option attack, early on this year, they were doing really well and scoring some points. They've had a really rough stretch the last 4, as we said. But at the same time, again, this is that youth that's playing. So let's see if they kind of bounce back. They're going to have their hands full because Jefferson's defense is nothing to shake your head at. Those kids come to play every day, and they play tough. I mean, the offense has not been there every single night for the Blue Jays, but if Grandview's offense doesn't show up, this could turn ugly.
Yeah, it could real quick, and that's going to be the big thing. And once again, the triple option is an offense that if you don't see it very often, it's against defensively. In my coaching days back in Ohio, we ran the triple option, and we were able to do it pretty successfully the first 2 years. But then everybody kind of caught on, and then people were able to scheme on some of the stuff that we were doing, and that's kind of what happened with Grandview in the middle part of the season.
Yeah. I agree. And it's just trying to get those through those learning curves and things like that, because, again, young teams, it takes a little bit of time to gel, but at the same time, they're playing a much better football even than whenever I was over there working. And yeah, the Blue Jays they're still a tough out for anybody. So our next matchup takes us back into the city and features another set of state-ranked teams as the 3-3 best 3-3 team in the state, Class 6, 5th-ranked DeSmet Spartans take on the top-ranked, I know it's very subjective of me to say, the top-ranked team in Class 4, the 5-1 St. Mary's Dragons. DeSmet comes into this matchup after defeating conference opponent SLU High last week, 37-20. The Spartans have had a prolific passing attack this season, led by quarterback Christian Cotton, who has racked up 1,154 yards passing and 11 touchdowns with only 2 picks. Despite the news of their school closing last week and an uncertain future ahead, St. Mary's certainly showed their dominance as they routed St. Dominic 49-10. The Dragons' offense has been nearly unstoppable this season, averaging 44 points per game. Jim, this is another great battle of top-tier teams. What's your thoughts on this one?
Cotton's been terrific for DeSmet. And once again, their schedule has just been, ungodly pretty much, with who they've had to play through the first 6 games. But they're still a really good team. And Cotton does a lot of great things for them. I really like the defense. Markaway has just been a terrific, terrific player on the defensive side for the Spartans. But, once again, you're going up against the top-ranked team in the state. And 4, St. Mary's has so many weapons at their disposal, especially out on the edges. The big key for me in this game is going to be, can St. Mary's, it's going to be a pretty big disadvantage for them on the line. This game is going to get one up front on both the offensive and defensive lines, just because, DeSmet's big and they are physical. They are nasty. And St. Mary's, they're more of a finesse team, so to say. And I say finesse when, and they like to do some different blitz packages. They'll throw some different stunt looks at you. So matching up heavy on heavy is going to be really interesting to see. It's going to be a great matchup in South City. And, it's a game that I'm keeping my eye on because it's going to be 5 minutes away from my house, basically here in South City. So, that's going to be a fun game to watch, and this could be one of those games that goes down to the last down to the last quarter.
Yeah, and I think both teams they're both battle tested,
Yeah.
and what St. Mary's is going to be capable of doing against this caliber of an opponent is going to, in my opinion, I can think it kind of just sets the tone for the rest of their season and in the state playoffs.
This is a huge game for St. Mary's. They're already getting points to solidify number one in district play because they're playing up a class. For
Yeah.
DeSmet, you get a win. This is going to help you with some of the seeding things that are going to happen in that Class 6 District 2. Especially you've got a Troy nipping at your heels. You got some of those other schools. So the implications, this is a pretty big game for both of these two teams.
100% agree. Should be a fun one to see how that one shakes out for sure. Our next highlighted game will feature the 1-5 Bayless Broncos traveling down I-55 to take on the 4-2 Herculaneum Black Cats. Bayless took a tough loss last week to Class 1 ranked St. Vincent 48-6, and the Broncos offense has shifted into neutral lately, scoring 12 points total in the last 3 games. Herculaneum is coming into this one after an impressive showing against Grandview where they won 46-0. While the Black Cats offense has been the highlighted side of the ball, the defense has been very impressive as well, holding opponents to an average of just 10 points per game. Jim, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about Jackson Deering. I know we've talked a lot about Lucas Barr and what their offense has done. But boy, I'll tell you, I really think Herculaneum's defense is pretty legit.
They are, without a doubt. And we talk about Barr, we talk about Barr, we talk about Jackson and how dynamic they are. But I don't think the defense is getting enough credit, and I absolutely agree with you. That game down in St. Vincent a couple weeks ago, St. Vincent races out to the early lead, and then all of a sudden Herky's defense starts putting stop against stop against stop, and got them. It gave them the opportunity to get their offense back into the game, and then for the offense to get to the 20-yard line before literally time just ran out on them. I really like what they're doing down there. I think Maloney has been terrific for them, and from that linebacker position. I like Herky in this game. I think Herky's going to come away with it. You're looking at one of the best seasons that Herculaneum has had in many, many years.
Yeah.
And it's really, really great to see. And I think they continue to keep the train rolling this week with a nice victory.
Yeah, and Coach Boss has done a great job as far as getting the program kind of turned in that direction, and then utilizing the talent that he has correctly to play well. And I mean, they're facing down a chance to be 5-2, and for what they've had recently in recent history, that's very impressive. And I think this team is I mean, again, you talk about tough outs, and we'll see how the district plays out and where they get seeded. But I really think that they've had a great season so far.
And you know what? This is the perfect example is you're building your program and your system around the kids instead of the kids trying to fit into the system.
Right.
And that's what good coaches do. And I really love what Coach has done down at Herculaneum is, he's seeing what the kids' strengths are, and he's building his game plans around what those strengths can be. And you don't see that very often on the high school level.
Right.
Okay, you go to Webb City, guess what? You better know how to run the veer. I don't care what you can do and how you can do it. You're going to run the veer. I mean, when you go to other schools, we're going to run the spread. You better know how to be a great receiver or you're not going to work for us. Herculaneum, they build things around what talent they have, and that's really cool to see.
Yeah, and like I said, I think they're gonna finish out with one of the best seasons they've had in quite a while, and credit to coaches and to the kids, because I think this is going to be a good year for them. All right, next we have arguably the oldest rivalry in Southeast Missouri is the 5-1 St. Genevieve Dragons take on the other hometown team, the undefeated Class 3 third-ranked Valley Catholic Warriors. St. Gen took the W last week, defeating conference opponent Potosi 26-12. The Dragons will face a much different opponent this week as Valley comes into this game on a high. Last week, the Warriors defeated Class 3 state-ranked Park Hill Central 40-30 in a back-and-forth shootout. This is always a heated rivalry, Jim. So, I mean, you're talking about families playing families.
It's what it's all about. I mean, this is the Hatfields and McCoys. This
Yeah.
is, this is Ohio State and Michigan. This is, I mean, golly, yeah. I mean, you've got cousins playing against cousins, and that's what's great about this rivalry. But what makes it even better this year is that St. Jed's having a pretty good season.
Yeah.
I mean, they've kind of righted the ship a little bit over the last couple of years. And like I said earlier, I think Valley, the sticker shock of having to move from three, from 1 to 3 last year, I think, Coach Nager has put everybody in the room and said, okay, we ain't moving. So we got to play at the level that we know how to play. And that's what they've done. And that victory over Park Hill Central last week was terrific. Their resume this year is just really, really good, and they're doing it the way they do things. They beat you up front, they pound the rock, and they score touchdowns. That's their formula, and they play great defense. You just put that on just as the icing on the cake. So, I think Valley wins, but I think this is going to be a little bit more of a competitive game than what we've seen in the past between these two backyard rivals.
I mean, the overall series is pretty close to being even, with obviously Valley and their recent success has put them a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a rivalry game that has family reunion implications, not just it's bragging rights when you're getting the fried chicken with your uncle, or your cousins, and everybody's giving you a hard time because, hey, we beat you. So it's going to be one of those kind of games where, I mean, hey, I love it. I love that kind of game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's back home, back in Ohio, it's almost like the, Ursuline Cardinal Mooney. I mean, you got the one side of town playing the other side of town, cousins against cousins, family members against family members, and that's what it's all about. That's what makes it really fun.
100% agree. So our final highlight game showcases the 5-and-Wood, finally ranked Rockwood Summit Falcons taking on the 4-2 Oakville Tigers. Summit had another impressive showing last week, defeating McClure 44-0. The Falcon defense has been superb the last 2 weeks, led by junior defensive end Dominic Bentrop, who has tallied 40 tackles and 7 sacks on the season. Oakville is coming off of a big win themselves last week, defeating Northwest 62-7. The Tigers have had a solid rushing attack this season, led by junior running back Ethan Venable, who has racked up 642 yards on the ground and 15 scores for the season. Jim, what do you think about this one?
I like what Oakville's done this year. I mean, this, once again, another program that, was really, really good for many years back in the late 2000s and kind of fell off the map a little bit. But, they're making a nice comeback this year. And I really like, what they're doing and how they're doing. But we talked about this other team. They're good.
Yeah, they're good.
I mean, Summit's good. And they're getting great quarterback play. Defensively, they're as solid as it gets, and a good friend of mine, and actually, John Diffley, what he does on the defensive stuff with, some of the things he dials up, it's just unbelievable. And once again, that's how the Falcons win. That's how Summit wins. Their bread and butter is defense, and it's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, Oakville's going to throw a lot of different things at them. But look at how the Summit team has grown since that loss to Marquette earlier this year in week 2. Head and shoulders above the rest right now. And once again, they've only lost 2 games in the last 2 years. That's pretty good.
It's not just pretty good, it's really good. But and I got to give a little bit of love to Coach Ginge over at Oakville. I think he's done a fantastic job turning things around, getting the ball rolling in the right direction. They're having a good season. I mean, they got 2 losses on the year, but at the same time, they're playing good opponents. They're playing their schedule, and this is a good test for him and his team. They can look back and kind of see exactly where they are. And again, you're right. This Summit's very solid, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, without a doubt. And once again, they know where they're at. They know what district they're in, and they know they're going to have to beat St. Mary's, the defending Class 3 state championship, in that district final. And I think they're starting to get amped up. They're not looking too far ahead, but they know they have to get better week by week by week to be ready for that possible district championship matchup, with them and St. Mary's.
Yeah, it's going to be, that's going to be a fun one to keep your eye on. Well, Jim, appreciate you joining us again this week for week 7 preview. You can catch more information from Jim. There's all kinds of different content on scoopswithdannymac.com. Jim, you got anything new out there?
Yeah,
Of course you do,
again,
but
of course we do. And the free content. It's the free content. Basically, Monday we wrapped up. What a great weekend! Tennis, individual and doubles, singles and doubles. Districts were held last weekend, so we got a story about some of those kids that are going to move on to the state singles and doubles tournament next weekend down in Springfield. Some great softball going on right now. We had Jen Brockman Brown on our podcast today with Eric Stewart talking about Francis Howell softball program. I know Kevin's probably wondering when I'm going to get him on with the great year that Pius is having. That's coming up soon. Don't worry, Coach. But no, and then Friday we'll have our weekend preview. We'll preview a couple of these big games that we just talked about. It's Team District Week for tennis, so going to have a lot of that stuff. So a lot of great free content on Scoops with Danny Mac, and then obviously on Fox 2 every Friday night on the Prep Zone.
So, hey, and I got to say, last night with watching and broadcasting the Jefferson R7 St. Pius volleyball game, which has kind of been building. Ooh.
I told you guys that was going to be pretty doggone good, and it ended up to be a 4-set thriller.
Yeah,
that could have won. That 4-set could have won either way.
Yeah,
and once again, these teams are good. You look at the road that Pius has. They've got DeSoto in their district. They've got Farmington in their district. I mean, that's a brutal district when you're talking about things. And then you got Jefferson, who I really think in the lower levels can make it back down to the Show Me Center. Yeah. So, yeah, I told you guys that was going to be a great match. I wish I could have gotten down there, but, some things going on meeting-wise that I had to stay back up here in the city for. But, boy, I knew that was going to be a slugfest. It was a lot of fun to watch you guys bringing it to everybody, and it was a great broadcast.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, we tried. It's the first volleyball game we ever did. And if people are
Blair didn't mess it up that bad. That's all I'm going to say. It did not get messed up that bad.
Yeah. There's some basketball terminology that was thrown out there in the volleyball game. So anyway, Jim, appreciate you joining me as always. It's been a fun week. Can't wait to see how things shake up and how they all play out. If anybody is curious to watch any football game, any action, you can always tune in to Streamline Sports and watch their on-demand content for free. This week, Off the Rails Media will have another Between the Lines Friday Night Football matchup as the St. Vincent Indians will travel to St. Pius X to play the Lancers. Should be a fun one. Pregame at 6:45, and the game should start around 7 o'clock. Jim, it's going to be a fun one, man.
Absolutely. Can't wait till we get back together next week and talk about the great games from this weekend and preview everything for next week as we hit week 8.
Awesome. Hey, and thank you guys for joining us. Until next week, we'll see you guys later. Tune in for new episodes of Coach's Box each week on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or the Streamline Sports app. And you can also listen to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. This episode of On the Move with the Caravan football preview with Jim Powers is brought to you by Scoops with Danny Mac and Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.